Hey everybody, how is it going? I'm excited about today's class. Today is going to be all about, it's going to be a first composition class in a series of composition classes, all about melody. So we're just going to be writing lots of MIDI today. Um, the You should look down below. There's a link to class notes in a new panel down below called Today's Class. And I have two things in here for you. I have class notes and this document, which we'll talk about as we go. So take a look at those. Also, go ahead and I hope you all did the preparation that I suggested. It's listed below. I want you to get a blank Ableton session and a MIDI track and some gentle, pleasing sound. Yes, these will be up for rebroadcast. They stay up here on the video page. I also post them to my YouTube page. Mic volume, thank you. Mic volume, how's that? Oh, there's a knob on OBS. That up, this down. Okay, how's this mic volume? Okay, so go ahead and get yourself some gentle instrument that you don't mind working a lot with today. And if you haven't done the instructions that I sent in the email or that I listed below, if you're just showing up now, that's fine. I'm going to walk you quickly through this process of constraining our working area to a single scale. So I'll talk through that very quickly. You can follow along and do it. There's also a link to a YouTube tutorial that I made that you can check out that'll walk you through as well. So step one, you make an empty MIDI clip. Double click on an empty clip slot in session view. Step two, you click in a scale. So I'm clicking in a C major scale, which is all the white notes. Next, I select that, Command C to copy. Then I move it to all of the octaves. So you can move it up or down an octave, holding down the shift and using the arrow key. So I move it down and then I paste, and I move it down and I paste, and I move it up and then I paste, and then I move it up and then I paste, and I move it up some more. So I really want to fill out kind of from C1 to C8 with my notes here. Then I want to get them out of the way. So in my video, I had you move them to the right of the loop area. A better practice I have since learned is to put them on the left. So you can turn the start down to -1, and you get some space to the left of the loop area before bar 1. And you can just drag this over here. Again, this is a scale, this is the C major scale. I think I just moved, yeah. But if you want to write in a different key, you can just take the bottom note and drag it to the key that you want. C major scale is also A minor scale. So it's both major and a minor set of pitches. Okay, so I've moved it over to the left of my clip area, and then I'll move my start point back. Just so I'm not starting at -1. Cool. Okay, so here we are. Then you hit fold. And fold hides all the notes that are not the notes that you want. Okay, so I'm a little annoyed by all this extra space I created for myself. Oh yeah, you can zoom in and zoom out, and then it'll go away. Great. So that's the first step. You've got to constrain everything that you're going to work in today into a single scale. So I'm going to give you a moment to do this if you haven't done it already. And then we'll get started. Cool. Okay. So let's do a little warm-up. I need a better word for spray, because spray is kind of gross, but that's the idea that I have. We are just going to create a little bit of musical material by clicking at random-ish. So I'm not totally random. I'm constraining within a kind of a small range, but I'm not thinking too hard about this. And then I listen. So everybody go ahead and spray a little bit with MIDI notes. We're just getting ourselves something to start working with. Okay, so now we're going to review a handful of the tools that you are going to use when you're editing in this view. I'm going to cover them quickly and then give you time to practice and try out whichever ones you're not familiar with. So the first thing is that we are living in the land of the grid, right? The grid are these lines here. They determine the subdivisions of time that we're working in. We want to be able to change this a lot because the duration of the note that we make is a function of how big the grid is. So let's all practice making notes of different lengths by changing the grid size before you make a note. So here's how you change the grid size. Command 2 makes it bigger. Command 1 makes it smaller. Command 3 makes it triplet. Command 4 turns it on and off. But let's just focus on 1 and 2. So I'm doing Command 1 and I'm getting smaller and smaller and smaller notes. Command 2 and I can write bigger notes. Go practice that for a moment. Make some long notes, make some short notes. I think it's better to get good at working this way because then you can make notes of any length right away. You don't have to make a note and then adjust the length of it. I think you probably are working this other way where you make a note and you're like, it's the wrong length. I gotta make it the right length. Okay, now I'm going to just go through a quick list of everything that you should be able to do in the MIDI roll. Some of these maybe new for you. So practice those now, whichever you need to work on. We're going to use the arrow keys. So you can go left or right to move this thing. Then you can hold down the shift and move left or right to select time. You can move individual notes. When you select them, you can move them around with the arrow keys. You can make them shorter or longer by holding down the shift key and doing left or right. The pencil tool up here, also Command B to toggle, lets you quickly write a whole bunch of notes in a row. I rarely use it for that though, except maybe when I'm making hi-hats. But I use it all the time down here at the bottom with velocities. It's really a pain to click and adjust velocities of notes one by one. You're always missing it, blah, blah, blah. But the pencil tool is really great. You can just drag a shape and give yourself some more variety of velocities. Scrub, that's the name for this thing where you put your mouse just below the loop area and you get a speaker and you click and it will start playing, well, not from there, but from the nearest bar or quarter bar or whatever you have selected here. So this is how you can listen. You can say, I just want to focus on this part of it. You can choose your start point with this scrub speaker. Cool, transformations. We have a whole collection of them over here. We can compress time by 2 or expand it by 2. Make short things long, long things short. We can reverse things and it'll invert the order. We can do invert and it'll make the low notes the high notes and the high notes the low notes. Legato is something we haven't talked about in this class. It extends each note to fill empty space. So whatever pattern we have, it'll take those notes and lengthen them so that there's something playing all the time. That's really handy when you're making lines. If you want to have a melody with different durations of notes, one way to do it is to adjust the durations yourself. Another way is to just make a bunch of short notes. And legato. Well, you have to select them. Legato. And then it will make them all that. Cool. And then you need to be able to zoom. So you need to zoom. You can zoom in by putting your mouse up here on the timeline, clicking and pulling down. You can also press equals and minus to zoom in and out. And you'll also be moving around north and south here. And so there's another zoom on the left. Put your mouse over here, magnifying glass, and you can pull left or right to zoom in and out, and pull up and down to slide to different parts of the piano roll. Okay, and now we get to the most important ones for writing better melodies, and that is repetition. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. So say we've got this idea. We can duplicate it by selecting it and doing Command D. You can drag duplicate by selecting whatever you want to duplicate and hold down Option while you drag. And you can do duplicate loop, which takes however long your loop is, and copies what's in it and extends it. And last, you can do just good old-fashioned copy paste. Select here, click over here, Command V to paste. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes now. I'd like you to go down this list and do any of these things that you haven't done before or that aren't a quick and easy part of your, comfort zone. So take the notes that you have, mess with them in all these ways just to get all of this back under your belt. And we're back. Okay, I'm going to address a couple of things that came up in the chat. So, first of all, there's this selection area. When you select some time, it puts two kind of warp markers. These are actually warp markers. You can stretch them and it will stretch the contents. Sometimes you end up with slightly strange results because it's putting the warp marker, for whatever reason, at the beginning of the first note and the beginning of the last one. And if you want to compress all of these into a certain amount of time, you actually want this warp marker to be at the end so that you can compress all of them. To move the warp marker without stretching, you can hold down the... which key? Oh man, I did this in a different video I made. Oh yeah, hold down Shift key and you can drag it to the end and then you can compress. So I think that was one of your questions. Another question was, okay, you can make all the notes longer. Can you make all the notes shorter? And there's not a button for this, but it is easy to do. So first of all, you can select all the notes that you want and just pull them back. But then check it out. You get stuck at, you can't make these any shorter because these won't go any shorter. So a better way to do it, if we want to make them all the same length, say we've got a whole variety of notes of different lengths here, is to select them all, and hold down the Shift key and hit the left arrow. And you can keep hitting that until they're all little tiny, and then hit the right arrow, and you can lengthen them all to the length that you want. Okay, so that's all the technical stuff. Let's get into the musical ideas here. So, melody. A melody is a line that can be easily sung. It has one note at a time, it has more steps than leaps, it spans less than 1.5 octaves, almost always, and it leaves space to breathe. It doesn't run on forever. So the harder it is to sing, the less it's like a melody, which isn't to say it's less useful as a musical idea, it's just less like a melody. It's probably more like an instrumental part, like guitar arpeggios or piano comping or something else. So melodies are really important because they, I think, are the they contain a lot of emotional content. They can give a lot of emotional weight to things very easily. Small details in a melody have a huge impact on the meaning of the music in a way that small details in like the arpeggiation in the background or something do not. So we're going to start by writing melodies, but we're also going to write other kinds of parts and think about writing complementary parts as well. So I have some general advice for all of these exercises that we do. First, do lots of copying as you write. If you want to write this melody, don't write it by clicking every single note. Write a couple of notes and then see what you can do with those notes. Take those, invert them, take those, move them down. Make things out of other things, in other words. This is going to give internal structure to your melodies. If there's one way that you can start making your melodies better, if you take only one thing away from this class, it's to work in different scales like this. Sometimes on the level of the individual note, sometimes in whole phrases. Ableton makes this kind of thing really easy to do, and it's a really core part of what makes some melodies good, is that they have lots of internal repetition and structure. Even if you then go in and move things around, having in your process copying larger chunks is going to leave some of that deep structure in. Second, I think you should try as best you can, even if you can't sing along with the lines that you write. Put them in your body, you're going to be able to make better decisions about them, and you'll tap into your natural musical intelligence, which you have a ton of, because you have listened to millions of hours of music in the course of your life. So putting things into your body helps you tap into that intelligence, and you'll feel when things are weird, when the pacing isn't right, when the shape isn't right. Do some singing, follow your intuition. Trust yourself, you have ideas, even if you don't know what they are yet. If something feels off, go and mess with it. You're probably right. It probably is off. You know what a good melody is, even if you don't know how to write one. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is write a 4-bar melody with only 4 pitches. So take your loop thing here, type in 4, enter to get yourself 4 bars. And you're going to work with just 4 different pitches, but you can use them in any order, in any combination. Repeat them. I suggest using a variety of note lengths. And I suggest thinking about keeping one to make special. You can make a note special by not overusing it. For example, if we repeat these notes a lot, and then save this one, then it becomes special. So don't use all of your 4 notes in the same frequency or it's going to be boring. Okay, I will put 3 minutes on the clock. Ready, set, go. Okay, my clock didn't work, but how about we do 30 more seconds on this? Okay, come on back. So now's a good time to introduce my questions, because you've probably written something that is a little boring, right? I've given you some constraints that are going to make it pretty difficult to write something really interesting, but most of the time when we're writing, we're looking at something that isn't right yet. It still needs work. It's kind of boring in some way or another. So I have some questions that you could be asking of your music as you go and some answers for it. It's not good yet. Well, is any of it good? Maybe most of it is bad, but a little bit is good. Cut what's bad, crop to whatever's good, and loop it. Make something out of the good part. Cut the rest. Clean it up if it's messy. Move any notes that are kind of bummers up or down just one step and it'll probably be fixed. Use more repetition if it's vague. And if it's boring, think about how you can spice it up. Maybe it's the rhythm, maybe it's the notes. So I do a first draft, and then I start asking these questions and see if I can improve things. So the one that I made for you just a minute ago was pretty boring. I did it quickly. And so I thought about how to make it more interesting. Is the rhythm boring? Yeah, it definitely was. So I made some things happen off the beat rather than this pattern happening exactly the same in bar 1 as bar 2. I make these same notes happen, but I move them behind a beat. And yeah, I'll just leave this up. This can be helpful to you as you go. So here's what I turn it into. Not the most interesting thing, but we are writing single lines, and single lines are going to feel pretty naked, and I think we just need to get comfortable doing that. You'll find that some are better than others, even if they're all still kind of bare. You'll be surprised. You add one bass note and all of this comes alive. Okay, let's keep going. Next exercise. Now we're going to be writing a classically beautiful melody. So these are kind of distilled melodic writing principles from classical music. A single high point 2/3 of the way through. You want your highest note to only happen once. That's why I saved my special note, my highest note, to be my special note that only happens once. A good way to start writing a melody like this is just to trace out a contour and say, like, I want to start here and I want to get to my climax up here and then I want to come down again. And then fill in the mid space with a mix of short and long notes, maybe some internal repetition, copy and drag. We want to have more steps than leaps. A step is the distance of a note to its next door neighbor, and a leap is anything larger. So if there's lots of leaps, it's not very melodic. So we want to have more steps than leaps. And we want to have balance in our momentum. When we leap up, we need to balance it by stepwise motion down. A big leap up and then another leap up. It doesn't follow gravity, right? When you leap up, you need to then fall down to balance the energy. So a high point and then maybe some scale-wise stuff down. And it's the same. When you leap up, follow with steps down. And when you leap down, follow with steps up. This helps us keep balance. And then this is a tiny detail that I love from Lou Harrison. It's so elegant. Lou Harrison's one of my favorite composers. He says, melodically, it is stronger and more beautiful when skipping to use the tone nearest the tone being left. So yeah, when you're leaping away, don't leap to the note and then step and then leap to the note. Yeah. Let's see if I did any of that here. Yeah. Yamba. He says that this is nicer. Ya. Da. Than this, leaping to the note that's about to approach. Yeah, doesn't have the same kind of flow. So thinking about these things, write yourself a classically beautiful melody. Do a contour first, fill it in, following these as much you can, and just follow your ears. Once you have a draft, follow your ears, and if you feel stuck, you can ask some of these questions and try these solutions. Okay, here's 3 minutes on the clock. And we're back. The next thing that we're going to write is called a shout and fall. This is a melodic shape that's really permeated popular music. Blues, jazz, rock and roll. If this is a European shape from classical music, this is really an African American shape. So all of the popular music that we get from Black culture, this is the melodic shape that is the most common. So it's kind of like a shout or a cry, where you take a big breath in and you make a really loud, big, high note, and then you fall from there. So I'm going to start with a leap. You can do a leap or not. This is actually also a popular, really common shape all over the world. It's the kind of a archetype of melodic shape. And there's a really great book by Kurt Sachs called The Wellsprings of Music that traces this shape through lots and lots of different musical traditions. So the basic idea is this. A leap up to a strong high note, and then some kind of decorated fall to fill in the gaps. I'm going to go down a little bit. And this rhythm is really square, so I would spice it up with playing with the rhythms, leaving spaces, moving things off the beat. But that's the basic shape. Go ahead and try this out. Leap up or skip the leap and just start high with a long note, and then fill in the descent with some kind of interesting structure. Here's 3 more minutes. Okay, and we're back. Way to practice. So here's mine. I finessed it a little bit. Took a couple of things off the beat. I made the space that I'm leaping up and then trying to fill narrower. Did a more variety of short and long notes. And again, it still feels pretty naked, but we just have to remember that when we add other parts, these things come alive. So have faith in your boring things so far. All it takes is something to put them up against often to see their potential. Okay, so the next kind of melody that we're going to write is an idea that comes from Hindustani music called a jala. And the idea is this. You make some kind of melody with a bunch of holes in it. Trying to give it a good shape, give it a climax, kind of a clear contour, but I'm leaving lots of gaps. Maybe a couple of long notes here. So then I go in and fill in the gaps with some repeated pitch. So every time there's a space where nobody is striking a note, I play my drone. So I've got all these high notes and I'm moving kind of slowly. One thing, often when I'm bored by what I'm working on here, it's just needs to be faster. Then you can move that drone around and see how it changes the quality of the part. So go ahead and make one of these. Melody with holes, fill in the gaps with all one sustained pitch. Okay, come on back. So those are just some basic melodic shapes and principles that can guide you. Of course, every style of music has its own habits as far as melody goes. Some styles have really long melodies, some have short ones, some have really developed ones with a lot of variety, some have a lot, some are very simple. So to write in a particular style of music, analyze that kind of melody. But these are some basic principles. Next, I want to do a little bit of, I want to get into adding layers. As usual, I have planned way too much material for one class. So I just want also to announce that today, if you missed the note, today I'm going to do my first evening class as well. So at 7 p.m., I'm going to reprise this. I'm curious if I could skip the whole setup and practice if it was a lot of people coming back. Think about it. If you want to come back and just do more practice and have me talk a lot less, but guide you in more practice this evening, give me a thumbs up in the chat, and it'd be good to know if this evening is like a reprise of the class today or like a continuation. But yeah, so let's start adding some layers. So here's where this stuff really becomes three-dimensional and our notes take on more meaning. We're going to start by adding a bass line. So the simplest bass line that we could add is just a long notes the length of a whole bar or half a bar. I suggest putting 2 or 3. If you have 4 bars going on, just put 1 note per bar. When bass notes move by step, they have more juice generally than if they move by leap, or at least there are some leaps that have more juice than others, but steps are really strong motion. They give direction to the line and they change the harmony more dramatically than some leaps. So, So this kind of works right away. Yours may work right away, or it might sound a little weird. If it sounds a little weird, just try moving those notes to a different part of the scale. So that's nice, and then you can start looking for notes that just don't sound right. And I think this one doesn't quite sound right. So any note that doesn't sound right has a neighbor that probably does sound right. So just move it up or down 1 step and it'll probably work better. So go ahead and do this. Take one of your favorite things that you've made today, and add some slow-moving bass line like this, and move the notes around until it sounds right. We'll do this for like 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, and then come back. Okay, come on back. So thanks everybody. Thanks for showing up today. I hope that this is useful for you and that you got some good practice done. If you feel like that what you're making isn't interesting enough and you haven't seen my tutorial video that I led with this morning, take a look. This is a good overview of the whole process. I believe that it's down on my page. Under today's class, there's a link to a tutorial. Yeah, here's how it says. So click that, watch that. It shows the whole process of starting with a little bit of musical material, adding different layers of different kinds in different parts of the range, and then breaking it out into different instruments. And then it becomes an alive piece of music. And so take a look at that and just keep that whole process in mind as you work, because this is a kind of, these sounds are really naked. There's not a lot going on to be excited or interested by. But if you compose a whole picture here in one view, before you go searching for sounds, I guarantee you're going to get better melodies, better harmonies, everything's going to fit better together, your parts are going to be well balanced and distributed in different ranges. So this is really my favorite way to compose. Often the temptation is to say like, okay, I want a bass line, and then you write a bass line, and then you go looking for a bass sound, and you spend 20 minutes clicking through presets, and then you find one you like, and then the bass part that you wrote doesn't sound right because it's a different bass sound, and you go change that, and then an hour goes by and all you have is the bass part. So this is the process that I'm going to be teaching over the next couple of weeks. On Tuesdays, this evening, I'm going to do more of this stuff, and we're going to speed through all of the preamble and practice at the beginning and just dive into more exercises like this. And you'll build yourself up a whole texture and turn it into a piece. So come back tonight if you want to, you can, or you can catch the video later. All the videos of past classes are available here on Twitch or on my YouTube. If you haven't subscribed here or followed this page, you can hit the buttons on the top right of the window here. If you want email updates and more information, there's a link to my website below. And Thursday is going to be our first synthesizer day. I'm not going to teach one of Ableton synthesizers yet. We're going to get into analog and operator and wavetable in future weeks, but because not all versions of Ableton have all of these, you have to spend extra money for these. We're going to use a free one first called Helm. So if you want to check this out before class, you can download Helm for free. I'll send out information about this in the email as well. This will be a really great tool for us to learn the basics on. So that's Thursday. Saturday, we have a really awesome musician, violist, composer, and Ableton user named Nick Ravel, who's going to join us and give us a concert and show how the music works in Ableton. And that's all. Thanks so much for showing up. I'll be back this evening. See you soon. And now I'm going to stick around and answer questions if anybody has questions or wants to do more. Yeah, pragmatic is the right idea here. I love music theory. I could talk about it all day long. I can talk about chord structure and scales and counterpoint and harmony. It's uh, yeah, a really important part of my own musicianship to know that stuff. But working in Ableton, you can do so much by trial and error, and um, actually a lot of those tools of like thinking about um, I don't know. There's Ableton suggests to me a more pragmatic, cut to the chase way of taking all of those same ideas, but finding them in more of a workflow rather than a theoretical way. So that's what I'm excited to be exploring as I put these classes together. Yeah, let's see. So the rebroadcast, actually, the video of this goes up immediately after I stop streaming here, and it'll go under the videos tab on the top of this page. So that's where all past classes are. Recommend some music by Lou Harrison to listen to. Lou Harrison's guitar music is really awesome. Just look for any album of his collected guitar music. I'd say that's the gateway music for Lou Harrison. And then yeah, explore from there, but start with the guitar music. I love him. You know, his music sometimes, I don't know, it's not always the most interesting music. It's often super beautiful, lyrical, natural. But I really love him as a figure of a kind of a model for, I don't know, his whole personality and ethos for me is what's inspiring about him. I guess mostly that he did the whole New York hustle, try to get famous thing, and then decided to quit the rat race and move to a cabin in California and build instruments and write music. And there's like a spirit of independence about him in his music and attitude and writings and stuff that is appealing to me as somebody who is still very much in the like New York rat race. So yeah. My favorite synth instrument to work with is the next question. Let's see. I mean, I don't actually use the Ableton ones much, although they're great and you can do tons with them. I love the Arturia collection. I got these on sale recently. These are all models of old classic synthesizers. I've also been using, I'm getting to know this kilohertz phase plant is, I'm really excited by it. I don't know it inside and out by any stretch at this point, but I'm really excited by it. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there. We'll talk more about synthesis next Thursday, and I'll have my thoughts collected. Oh, yeah. Why does this happen sometimes? I forget. I know what you mean. This does happen sometimes. It's not the velocity of the last note that you made. Does anybody know? Does anybody know why sometimes the default velocity on a new note is 0? Yeah, I know that it's doing something on purpose, but I don't know what it is. I can't get mine to do it. I'm gonna uh, I'm gonna refer us all to let me Google that for you.com. Oh, you hit C. Oh yeah, that's cool. You can double click to make a note and immediately drag up or down to change its velocity. Oh, yes, that's it. Yes, thank you guys. I'll demonstrate that, but yeah, double click a note, pull up or down to set the velocity, and then all future notes that you make will be at that same velocity. What's this C you're talking about? Learn something new every day. Drag immediately. So I'm creating the note, double clicking, and holding my mouse down on the second stroke. Click, click, and hold. Here we go. And then pull up and down immediately before I even let go. Cool. Well, I'm going to bounce. I will see any of you who want to come back this evening, and have a great day. Oh, here's a good question before we go. Zach says, I realize I've gotten into a kind of a jazz trap with my writing where I'm always thinking of the harmonic context first. Sure, that's the kind of thinking that comes from writing your bass line first. But you can really write your parts in any order and you'll end up with different results. If you start with your melody and then try to harmonize it, then you're going to end up with a different progression of chords than you would if you're trying to start with an interesting bass line to begin with. So yeah, mix up the order of operations and also let the kind of trial and error experimentation of Ableton be a way to find things that you wouldn't otherwise think of if you're thinking of a harmonic structure immediately first. Okay, I'm gonna go. Take care. Bye, guys.